So I recently obtained this beautiful 2011 Gibson Les Paul traditional gold top. Just look at it. You can't hear it, but you would if it were playing. You can go grab a bite and still be in that one. Anyway, I got it from a guy named Chris Raitt, who apparently is the musical director for Ariana Grande. He's played for Kelsea Ballerini and Colby Calais, as well as others, I'm sure. So it's been around the world probably, and honestly it sounds and plays great. But there's one thing I wasn't particularly too excited about, and that is, of course, as you probably already have guessed from the video's title and thumbnail, is the tuners. So for whatever reason, I prefer my Les Pauls with the traditional or vintage style tuners. It's not even really the buttons, although I do prefer the keystone or the tulip plastic style buttons. It's really the clunkiness of the modern tuners, and I'm going to show you what I'm talking about here in a picture. So if you look closely, and in my opinion, you don't really have to look closely because it's blaringly obvious, but the modern tuners, typically Grover, have a really big washer on the front of the headstock that surrounds the tuner shaft. So for me, like I said, it's just too clunky and it takes up way too much real estate on the front of the headstock. So interestingly enough, Gibson currently sells both the 50s and the 60s Les Paul standard with the clunky washer on the front of the headstock. Now the 50s version does have the plastic tulip style button, whereas the 60s has the butterbean metal style button, but nevertheless they both have the big washer on the front of the headstock. And although I get it, to me that just doesn't say vintage Les Paul. So for me, it's got to be the vintage tuners. Now you can tell that I've obviously already installed the tuners on this guitar, but in this video I'm going to talk about how I did it and any kind of complications that I ran into. We're also going to talk about what kind of impression or mark the big washers leave on the headstock once you remove the old tuners and install the new ones. You can of course judge for yourself in this light, but I'll show you some closer up images later in the video. There is one quick thing left to talk about. I do apologize, this video turned out to be a little bit lengthy. There are timestamps down below so that you can go to the section that you're interested in. But in the middle of the video, I show you how I tried to age these plastic buttons a little bit by using various dyes and stains. But to be honest, I believe most of it has come off just by using the tuners. I can't say 100% for sure because I don't have a baseline example of what they look like before I applied the dye, but I will be honest and say that I think that most of it has worn off. Alright, that's it. Okay, check these things out. These are the Kluson adapter bushings. I mean, look at this packaging. Straight out of the 70s. I think the house I grew up in, built in the late 70s, had wallpaper that looked just like this. I don't know if they were too lazy to change it and they thought, that's cool, we'll just keep it, or if they're actually trying to look retro, but either way, it's cool packaging. Definitely has that 70s vibe. Anyway, I'm going to open these up and show you what they look like. This is my first time seeing the underside of these things. Of course, the packaging has just got a cardboard backing on it, and you can't see what they look like on the other side from this packaging, and even online it's hard to tell unless the seller has a really good picture. So I think I know what these are going to look like. I'm just going to try to open it up here if I can. It shouldn't be too hard, shouldn't be child-proof. Okay, it's coming. All right, so we got it here. We are in business, I think. Okay, got it. So there you go. Now I think that looks very much like a normal, I guess 8mm bushing. So if I haven't explained already, if you have a vintage guitar, then the holes in the headstock are going to be about 8mm in diameter. So a lot of people, when they upgrade, they go to modern tuners, which take a 10mm hole. So they have to drill out the headstock, make the holes bigger. So that means if you want to go back to the vintage style tuners, you have to get something like this, which is an adapter bushing. So these make it possible for you to use the vintage tuners, which normally require an 8mm hole, in a guitar that's had its holes enlarged to 10mm. Now, for comparison's sake, I'm going to show you another set of adapter bushings. This is from a cheapo neck that was made in China. Now, these bushings themselves didn't actually come with this neck, but similarly, they were probably made in China. I got them off of eBay or somewhere like that. I was just looking for something that would work, and I didn't even pay attention to what the outer ring of these things would look like in comparison to like a vintage adapter or bushing. So, you know, to me, they look really big. They look like the modern tuner style bushings or the flat washers that come with like the Grover tuners. So these are going to give you the appearance of modern tuners, but what I was actually going for in this instance was a vintage look. So for comparison's sake, take a look at the Kluson adapter bushing in comparison to these. You can see it's so much smaller, and it looks like the original bushings that would come with the vintage tuner. So I may try to just pop one of these out. It's not the easiest thing to do, but I've done it many times just for comparison's sake to see what it looks like, you know, in the midst of all these other really big adapter bushings that I realize now that I don't like. I do really like this one because it looks like the original. Okay, I got one of these bushings out, but check this out. This is the Kluson bushing, and it just kind of falls in there. So the hole that I had to make for these guys is slightly bigger than this one. As you can tell, it just drops out. It's not super loose. I could probably make it fit, you know, on this guitar with maybe some masking tape or something around there. I'd have to get creative, but just look at the size difference in that one compared to the rest of them. This is what I was going for to begin with, and this is what I have gotten for my Gibson Les Paul traditional gold top that I recently got. And so I'm going to install these on that guitar. That's the intent. That's why I bought these in the first place, and we'll see how that goes. Hopefully these fit into those holes better than this. Okay, I finally got these Kluson tuners in the mail. They were supposed to arrive December 14th, and they finally arrived on December 31st. So they just made it for 2020, about 2 weeks late. But anyway, I finally got them from the post office after their little fiasco this year. Totally understand COVID, all that stuff. Shortage of workers. Inside the box, we have the ferrules or the bushings that are vintage correct. We've already talked about the adapter bushings that I'm going to use. So we'll do a little comparison of the size of these. But these are the tuners. Now, I was looking for the Fender-style tuner. Let me show you that real quick. So the Fender-style tuner that I'm talking about is like this, where it has a split shaft on the top, and you insert the string down into the tuner shaft and then bend it and then wrap it around. But apparently those aren't really made for Gibson guitars, for Les Pauls or ES335s or SGs. 3 on a side type Kluson tuners aren't really made like that. They're only kind of for Fender guitars, which I didn't realize. I was looking for those, like I said, but I wasn't dead set on it. It wasn't going to stop me from buying some tuners that are just to have the tulip. I really wanted the plastic tulip keystone type buttons, and for the Les Paul, they just come with the type of modern tuner. I'll take these out and show you, but I'm sure you know what I'm talking about as if it focuses there. So you can see the hole goes through the shaft, sort of perpendicular to the shaft itself. So that's the modern style tuner, and that's what these are. And obviously they're 3 on the side, they're for a Les Paul. Now there were some specifics that I wanted to get for these. I wanted to have the two-line description on there. These say Kluson Supreme. So there's like a Gibson Deluxe, I think, were maybe the originals. I don't know all the history. I know they've changed through the years, but me specifically, I was looking for the single line tulip or keystone button, and then I wanted the 2-line description on the back. That's just something I kind of like the look of, and I was looking for. And so these are the Supremes. I'll show you the model number on the box here. It is KTS3N. I'm guessing that's Kluson, maybe it's keystone, and then maybe tulip. I don't really know what the T's for. Supreme, I'm guessing 3 on the side, and nickel. Like I said, I'm totally guessing on that. I don't really know, but check out the box. It does match the old kind of 70s vibe of the adapter bushings as well. The greens don't really match, but hey, we'll still give them credit. So anyway, okay, so let's compare these bushings or ferrules real quick. If I can zoom in here, I will try my best. Here we go. So you can't really tell a difference. The one on the right is the original style vintage. It's a little bit, let me put them in my hand here. It's a little bit less of a diameter, so I guess 8 millimeters, and I guess the one on the left is the thicker style, like 10 millimeter. But really there's not a lot of difference, which is cool because I'm sorry you have to get a close-up of my dry winter hands, but essentially they look identical, which is really cool that you can have a Les Paul or Gibson's type guitar. You can go the Grover route and then go back and essentially look like nothing ever happened, except for the ring around each post of the headstock, which we'll talk about. But anyway, that's that. Now, as you can see, these tuners are new and bright and shiny, kind of chrome looking. They are nickel, but the tuners that I'm going to replace on my Les Paul are these, obviously Grover, but they are either Relic, or the guy that sold the guitar to me, said they were vintage. I should have asked him, or I guess I still could on Reverb if he's willing to answer the question, but they definitely look old. So whether or not someone intentionally did it or they're actually just aged naturally, I don't know. But obviously this kind of worn in motif doesn't apply to these tuners. So I didn't really think about it when I bought them. I could have bought maybe some Relic version of these if they sell them. I know Goto and some other brands sell like the new version and a Relic version. A lot of times the Relic version are $10 or $15 more. I can do it myself, and that's what I'm planning on doing. I didn't plan on it necessarily, but I don't think these are going to fit, like I said, with the overall vibe of my guitar that I bought, because it is worn in and it's got some wear spots and it just has sort of a fairly aged hardware. So what we're going to do is take some hydrochloric or muriatic acid and do what we can to relic them and make them look a little older. Okay, so what I need to do first is kind of scuff these up a little bit. That's going to help them just get some kind of natural wear and get them prepared for the acid or acidic type substance that's going to corrode or make these look patinaed. So I've just got some 400 grit sandpaper here, and there's not a whole lot of rhyme or reason. I am trying to go just like lengthwise this way along the backs of the tuners, because otherwise if you do like swirls or circles, it just will look unnatural, I guess. But it's not really easy to get into these crevices, so just gonna do what I can. And see, like this, you can see that ridge there where it's like a valley, and the sandpaper just not getting in there. So let's do what I can. It's not gonna be perfect. Okay, 1 done, 5 to go. Okay, wow, so sanding these is definitely the hardest part. I forgot how tedious it was getting in all these cracks and crevices. I started out with 400 grit, and I think that's probably too abrasive. So I went to 800, not that it really matters because I already had used the abrasive. So this wasn't necessarily like polishing it out. Maybe it was, I don't think it matters too much. But anyway, just for your information, I think 400 is a little bit abrasive. I think I used 600 last time I did this, so that makes sense. Anyway, my hands have all kinds of, I guess, fine metal or nickel on there. What I'm going to do now is put these in a little bath of... So this is a container and a container. You may have seen this before. The idea is to put the hardware in here. Hopefully they all fit in there, including the adapter bushings. And then I've got some muriatic acid here. In the past, I have used stuff called the Works toilet bowl cleaner, which is hydrochloric acid. It's much cheaper and comes in smaller quantities than this. I couldn't find any at my local Walmart or Home Depot like I've found in the past. Maybe because of COVID shortages, I don't know. But I did find this at Walmart. It's a gallon. It was about $9 with tax, so, and it's way more than I need, but it's gonna do the job. It is more potent than the Works toilet bowl cleaner that I've used in the past, so I'm gonna have to keep an eye on it and not go too long. So the next step is for me to kind of clean these things off with just some paint thinner, so that any kind of oils from my hands or any remaining, debris, I guess, will be cleaned off of these and get them ready for the little acid bath. So the thing about the oils is that they will kind of show up whenever you put these in there, and the fumes sort of work to patina these things. If you have any kind of like finger smudges, they will actually show up. So it's a good thing to kind of get those cleaned off as best you can. Hopefully I don't have any kind of, obvious scratches in these where it looks like I purposefully scuffed them up. I may, but I don't really think it's going to matter too much. So the next thing, like I said, is just to clean these off a bit with some paint thinner. Okay, I've got all the tuners in there. Now I'm going to, I need to scuff up the, I need to scuff up the bushings, and then I'll put those in there as well. Okay, I have all the tuners and the hardware in this little container. Now I'm going to take the muriatic acid with a glove on, of course, and hopefully not spill this anywhere. Just gonna pour a little bit in here. Probably don't need a lot. And then put this guy in, cover it up, and come back and check on it in a little while. Okay, here we go. I think I'm pretty much done with these. I left them in the solution for maybe, I don't know, 2.5 hours total. It wasn't a continuous amount of time. I left them in there, took them out, you know, observed them. I let them sit out because I believe what happens is the vapors get on there, and then when you take them out of the bath, they kind of oxidize, and mixing with the air, I kind of think works a little bit to make them have a haze and get that overall matte look as well. So I will reiterate that I think 400 grit is too aggressive. Some of these you can see there at the top is a little bit of pink looking stuff. So that's basically what I think is the nickel just come all the way off. And you can see it really happened on the corners where there, I guess, wasn't as much nickel coating. This stuff on here, paper towel, is just water. So what I did is when I was kind of satisfied with how they looked, I just washed them off really good. You don't want to have the vapors remain on there because it will continue to sort of eat away at the nickel. So you just want to rinse them off really well. You're not going to wash out the lubrication inside because it's oil based and it's not going to mix with the water and it's not going to wash out. So no need to worry about that. And then just let them dry really well before installing, of course. Now I'm debating about the knobs themselves because they obviously look brand new. They are brand new. What I could do is maybe I may do like a little trial, put some just mild wood stain on there and see what happens. I do have leather dye, which I think is probably intense and will make a difference, but I'm not sure I want to risk having them really dark. But it is plastic and they don't really absorb dyes that much unless you scuff them up. So I may just kind of work with it and do some trials and see if I can darken them up a little bit. Okay, here goes my trials. I've just got like a little touch-up wood finish marker. And here's another one that came from somewhere. Just gonna try these on the knobs and see what happens. I don't think it's gonna really hold the stain or darken up that much. So we'll just see what happens. Sorry for all the noises. I'm in my garage. Got the tankless hot water heater going. My family, kids screaming in the house. The freezer cycling on and off. My neighbor's truck, all kinds of fun stuff. So I don't think that's gonna really stick on there, but we'll see. Yeah, that just wiped right off. So I think I'm gonna have to scuff them up a little bit to get anything to stick in there. So I could try the leather dye. I might try that without scuffing them up. It's dicey, we'll see. I have the old leather dye here, Fibbings or Phoebings, I still don't know how to say it, but I used it on my project to darken up the fretboard on my Strat. Worked really well for that. If you're interested in that video, click on the eye in the upper part of the screen and it will take you to that video. But, oh geez, I don't want to dump it all over the place. So I'm just gonna take a Q-tip, dip it in there and see what happens. I have a feeling that in the same way as the wood dye worked, that this is just gonna wipe right off. Okay, it's been on there a few seconds and it looks like it's wiping off for the most part. I don't know. Looks like it's darkened up a little bit, which is cool because scuffing these things up is quite the task. It's just a tedious process, but if this will work, the only thing is, you know, it may just continue to wipe off. I think, you know, what's left on there is just a fine residue that probably just, yeah, it's like it's just continuing to wipe off. So unless I get some little tiny crevices and scratches in there, I don't think it's gonna really stick. It's just gonna wipe off on my fingers whenever I use the tuners. Yeah, it's a little bit darker, but maybe I'll scuff them up and then use the dye again. I don't want to overdo it. I don't want them to be brown. I just want them to have that kind of aged yellow tint. So we'll see if that works. I've got some 1000 grit paper I'm going to use to try to scuff these up because I really don't want major scratch marks on these to make it look fake. So we'll see how this works. I guess there's not really a good direction to go in. Just kind of overall get what I can. Hope it works out. Alright, okay, I'm gonna try some more of this leather dye. See what happens with it. I should be wearing gloves, but I'm not. I'm just gonna live with the coloring of my hands, the discoloration. It'll come off eventually. Hopefully it's not carcinogenic. I'll try to not get it all over myself, but it's gonna happen. It's inevitable. So we'll let this sit for a few seconds or something. I don't know if I can get, yeah, I can get it down in there. Actually, that crevice between the little lip, the ring, and the tulip is kind of holds dye very easily, so I don't really know that I want to get a lot in there. Okay, let's see what wipes off of this. It's looking pretty good for comparison's sake. It's not bad. That'll be good. I don't want to go too extreme with the tulip or the keystones. Probably can't tell much of a difference with the lighting, but I think it's significant enough that that'll be doable. So I'll continue this process, scuffing up with 1000 grit, applying the leather dye, and I think that'll be good. Just for the sake of comparison, I've zoomed in a bit here. The ones on the left are the ones I've worked on, and the ones on the right are the ones I've not. I think this one is actually the one I put the original wood dye on, so it's a little discolored, but these ones haven't been touched at all. So you can tell it's working a little bit. These are a little bit more brown and aged looking. I'm pretty satisfied with the results, so I'm gonna continue on with these, and then we should be done. Okay, here's the finished results. I think these are pretty good. They look more yellow on the camera than they actually do in real life. In person, maybe I'm too close. It's about the same. But anyway, I think that's a good result. The metal, the hardware is pretty good, kind of matte. Here's the original Grover, not original, but the Grover that came, and here's my dyed fingers. But this is the Grover that came with the guitar, and you can tell it's pretty much the same sort of intensity. Maybe my Kluson or Klusons are a little bit shinier. I'm not sure, but I don't want to overdo it. They will continue to age with time just because that's what nickel does. And I think I'm pretty satisfied with the results. So we're gonna leave it at that, call it good, install these adapter bushings, and hopefully all will be well. So these Grover tuners are held on the back by just one screw on the bottom side. On the headstock front side, I'll show you how they're installed if you're not familiar with that. But the good thing about these is that they utilize the same screw hole from the original vintage style tuners, so I should be able to just use that same hole again. Hopefully I can use the screws that came with the Klusons, but if nothing else, I'll just use this Grover screw and it shouldn't stand out or be too much different. So the way these Grovers are installed from the top is that there is a washer, which you can see here, goes down first, and then there's a little locking collar, if you can see that, that goes down onto the shaft. I can get this focused and I can coordinate. So obviously the washer is sandwiched in between there, but that's the way those work. And then there's that single screw that is held on the back. So I've just got a, this is a 13/32 socket, and I was able to just use by hand enough force to undo these nuts on top, or the collars. So it just comes right out. So you may be able to just break the locking collar loose by hand, or in this case, I might need to get a socket wrench. All right, let's try this. Looks like it's loose. So something I already knew I was gonna have to deal with are these rings around each tuner hole that's left there by the Grover washers. That's the way they go in, and inevitably you're gonna have like an indentation or an impression on top of the headstock, the face of it. You know, the nitro's been compressed a little bit. So I'm gonna take some of the old trusty paint thinner, and I've already kind of dusted it off and just gotten any kind of like little grit out of there. I don't wanna scratch it up any more than it has to be. I mean, it's obviously not pristine. It's been used, it's from 2011, but I'm just gonna try to get any kind of dirt that's out of there and that's in the little crevices and the rings so that it's not as prominent. So I'll do that and then we will proceed. Wow, gives it that just wash shine. Kind of nice. So that's probably gonna just evaporate fairly quickly, and hopefully it will have cleaned out these little crevices as good as it can get. They're not gonna be perfect. It's just something that you have to deal with when you go back to vintage from Grover. I wish it would have never been done, but it is what it is. It's not my preference. I don't really like the huge clunkiness of modern tuners. They just take up too much of the face of the headstock, in my opinion. But anyway, I'm not sure those got any cleaner than they were, so we'll just have to work with what we got and see how it looks. Yeah, this one right here is definitely the worst. It looks like there was a kind of a wave of nitro that got clouded around it, but you know, there's nothing really you can do about it. These bushings, the adapter bushings, seem to feel like they're gonna go in pretty good. They're not loose, but look at that one, just goes right down in there. So that's good. It could be too loose. It could be so tight that, you know, have to use some kind of force, which is doable. But if they can go in with just pushing them down in there, then that's great. Yeah, that's good. So we'll see if they all go in that well, and then we'll go from there. So they all went in with just hand pressure, which is good, but this one up here is just kind of loose, kind of just gets pushed in. So what I may do is just take some masking tape, take it around the adapter bushing one time, and then hopefully that'll give me just a little bit of that fill of that void that I need. I don't think it's just gonna fall out, but it's not in there very tight, that's for sure. So we're gonna need something to fix that. Okay, what I got is some blue painter's tape around the bushing. Now, I know this isn't ideal. Ideally, I guess you would get a piece of thin veneer that you could wrap around it, or actually, you know, outline the hole. I don't really have any way to do that. I don't know, maybe you could buy some that thin. I don't want to wait. I just want to get this done. You know, this stuff is made out of paper and paper's made out of wood. So that's my backwards theory that it's going to be okay. I haven't tried it yet down in the hole, so we'll see if it's actually going to work. Hopefully it will. It's going to be too tight. Okay, took off a little bit of tape. Maybe this will work. Still seems like it's going to be too tight. Okay, I didn't get it on the camera, but I got it to work. It's in there snug now. Yeah, hopefully that's okay. We'll see if we have any tuning issues or anything, but I'm not really sure of a better way to do it that's not super costly and time prohibitive. So that's what it's gonna look like for now. From a distance, I think it looks okay. I've seen other conversions back to vintage that look similar, and that was what I was expecting. I didn't expect it to look perfect, so I'm happy with it. So let's get those tuners installed. So with these screws, I just roughed up the heads of the screws with some sandpaper. I personally don't feel like it's worth the effort to put them in the acid bath or to, you know, try to relic them with any kind of chemicals, because I don't want to compromise the structural integrity of the screw. Not that taking off any of the nickel coating is actually going to harm the structural integrity. That's not where it's at. It's in the steel that these things are made out of. But just in case, and I think it suffices just fine to just scuff up the head of the screw a little bit and take some of the shine off. So that's what I did with those. It's always good to use a little bit of wax when you're doing this,
cause inside out is wicked and wicked and wicked and whack.
You want the screws to go in as easily as possible to not get hung up, and you definitely don't want to shear the head of the screw, leaving the shaft of the screw inside the wood of your headstock. Folks, they are installed. It's all done. Let me turn this around and see what they look like from the front. There's the front, not bad. You can't see the rings around the bushings too bad. I'm sure in the right light you can, but they look pretty good to me. They look proper, kind of 1957 gold top, and that's what I was going for. Something I want to do before I restrain this Les Paul is do a little bit of cleaning of the fretboard and conditioning. I have been using this stuff. It's called F1 oil and it's by Music Nomad. I did a video comparing this to a lot of other fretboard conditioners, and if you click on the eye in the upper part of the screen, you can watch that. I don't know the exact ingredients in F1 oil. They don't disclose that information. Neither does Fret Doctor or some of these other companies that make a kind of concoction of different oils. So I don't know exactly what it's made out of, other than the fact that it says 100% natural oils and petroleum and wax free. But we're gonna put it on here and it's gonna condition this board just fine. Just gonna put a little bit of this stuff on each fret. Probably don't even need that much, but I'll make sure we got good coverage. Really don't need a lot on these smaller frets, but that should be plenty. So let's rub this stuff in. All right, we're just gonna let that soak in for a few minutes and then we'll wipe off the excess. It's been a couple of minutes. I think we're good. We're gonna wipe this off. All right, that should do it. All right, everything's done. We're all strung up and ready to rock. The tuners look good. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.